Captain Wujin pressed his face against the cold metal of the viewing window. His breath made small clouds on the glass as he stared at the beautiful blue and green planet spinning slowly in the darkness of space. The planet looked so peaceful. From here, with white clouds dancing across its surface and bright blue oceans that sparkled like jewels behind him, the bridge of the alien research ship Harmonies. Edge buzzed with quiet activity. His crew moved carefully between the glowing control panels. Their long fingers danced over buttons that made soft musical sounds. The ship itself was a work of art made from materials that seemed to flow like water but were stronger than any metal. Dr. So Young sat at her translation station, surrounded by screens showing strange symbols and numbers that moved like living things. She had been working for 3 days straight, trying to understand the radio signals coming from the planet below her. Usually neat hair was messy and her eyes were red from staring at the displays. The Galactic Council had sent them here to study this new world and its people. They expected to find another peaceful civilization. Like all the others in their galaxy, maybe these humans would be ready to join the great community of star travelers. Maybe they would share their art and music and knowledge. Wujin remembered the excitement when they first picked up the radio signals. It meant intelligent life had developed on this distant world. The patterns were complex and organized, showing that these beings had learned to use technology to talk across their planet. But something was wrong. The signals they received were not filled with music and poetry like most civilizations. They were harsh and urgent, filled with words that made no sense. Fear and anger and violence seemed to pour from every transmission. So Young had been working day and night to build a translation program that could turn these alien sounds into words they could understand. The computer systems on their ship were designed to learn any language given enough time and examples, but these human languages were strange and difficult. The first breakthrough came when they detected mathematical patterns in some transmissions. Numbers were universal and math was the same everywhere in the galaxy. Once the computer understood human numbers, it could start working on their words. Steho. The ship's biologists floated over to Wujin using the gentle gravity fields that kept them comfortable. The biologist's skin had turned a worried shade of purple, which meant he was feeling upset about something. Captain, I think you need to see what So Young has found, Teho said quietly. His voice carried the musical tones of their people, but now it sounded flat and scared. Wujin pushed away from the window and glided across the bridge to So Young's station. The doctor looked up at him with wide eyes that showed fear and confusion. She had never looked this upset about any discovery before. I have translated some of their historical records, she said in a whisper. What I found does not make sense. These humans have done something that should be impossible. She touched a control and the speakers filled with a human voice. Speaking in careful, measured tones, the translation system turned the alien words into their own language in real time. On August 6, 1945, a single aircraft dropped one atomic bomb on the city of Hiroshima. The entire city center was destroyed in seconds. Over 70,000 people died immediately from the explosion and fires. Radiation sickness killed many more in the following weeks. The bridge fell completely silent. Every member of the crew stopped what they were doing to listen. The only sounds were the soft humming of the ship's systems and the distant crackling of radio signals from Earth. So Young continued playing more recordings. Each one told the same impossible story. These humans had learned to split atoms and release the power that held matter together. They had turned this discovery into weapons of incredible destruction. But that was not the worst part. 3 days later, they dropped a second bomb on the city of Nagasaki. Another flash of light brighter than the sun. Another city turned to ash and ruins. Tens of thousands more dead in an instant. Young navigator Haijin floated closer to the group. Her normally bright silver skin had turned dark gray with shock. How is this possible? She asked in a voice barely above a whisper. They used these weapons on their own kind. On their own planet. The crew gathered around So Young's station as she showed them more evidence. The humans had not stopped with 2 bombs. They had built thousands more each, one many times more powerful than the first. They pointed these weapons at each other across their world, ready to use them at any moment. Security Officer Minsu spoke up with anger in his voice. This makes no sense. Why would any intelligent species create such things, why would they risk destroying their own world so young? Pulled up scan results from their instruments. The planet below showed signs of nuclear testing everywhere, deep craters and deserts where they had exploded bombs just to see what would happen, underground caverns where they had set off weapons. Beneath the earth, radioactive material scattered across their world like poison. But the strangest thing was that life continued to thrive down there. Cities still glowed with light at night. Millions of humans still moved around their planet, still built new things, still sent messages into space. They had not destroyed themselves, despite having the power to do so many times over. Tejo studied the biological readings with growing amazement. Captain, these readings show that their population has actually grown since they first used these weapons. They now have more people alive than ever before in their history. How do they survive knowing they could end everything at any moment? Hyjin asked, do they not understand what they have created so young? Played another transmission. This one was different. It showed humans working together to reduce their weapons, to make treaties, to try to control the terrible power. They had unleashed. Some of them clearly understood the danger and tried to fix their mistake, but they still keep the weapons, said Min Su, studying the military data our sensors had collected. They have enough nuclear explosives to destroy their planet many times over, yet they continue to build more. Wu Jin felt a chill run through his body. In all their travels across the galaxy, they had met many different species. Some were peaceful like his own people. Some were more aggressive and competitive. But none had ever created weapons that could destroy their own world. None had ever been willing to poison their home with radiation. The most violent species they knew might fight wars with energy weapons or projectile guns, but they fought to win territory or resources, not to destroy everything. They valued life, even enemy life, because dead enemies could not surrender or negotiate. These humans seemed to have no such limits. They had built weapons that existed only to cause total destruction. There was no military purpose to a bomb that could level an entire city except to terrorize enemies into surrender through fear. Yet something about them was different from the mindlessly violent species that usually destroyed themselves early. In their development, these humans showed signs of intelligence, creativity, and even cooperation. Their art and music that leaked through their transmissions showed beauty and emotion. Da So Young found more recordings of human voices talking about their weapons. Many sounded afraid of what they had created. Many wanted to get rid of the bombs entirely, but they could not agree on how to do it safely. Each group feared that if they gave up their weapons first, their enemies would attack them. So they all kept their weapons and lived with the constant fear that someone might use them. This is beyond our understanding, Wu Jin said. Finally, we must contact the council immediately. They need to know about this species. He looked out at the blue planet one more time. It still looked beautiful and peaceful from space, but now he knew it hid a terrible secret. Somewhere down there, millions of intelligent beings lived. Every day, knowing that their civilization could end in minutes, they had the power to destroy everything they had ever built, yet somehow they chose to keep building. They lived with death hovering over them, yet they continued to live and grow and create. Either these humans were the most dangerous beings in the universe, or they were something completely new, something that had faced the ultimate test of survival and somehow passed it. The question was, which one were they? The great assembly hall stretched out like a vast crystal cave filled with beings from every corner of the galaxy. Ambassador Minho stood at the center podium, his uniform gleaming under the soft rainbow lights that bathed the chamber. His hands shook slightly as he prepared to show the evidence from Earth above him. Holographic displays flickered to life, showing the blue planet that had become the source of so much fear and confusion. Representatives from dozens of species filled the floating seats that drifted slowly around the hall. Their various forms of communication created a symphony of clicks, whistles, and musical tones. Elder Coordinator Biora led the session from her position high above the main floor. Her people, the Violet Circle, had been peaceful for over 1,000 years and had helped establish the galactic community based on harmony and understanding. Her purple skin had turned almost black with worry as she looked down at the human evidence. The first images appeared in the air above Minho, mushroom clouds rising like deadly flowers over human cities. The representatives fell silent as they watched the terrible beauty of nuclear explosions. cities vanishing in seconds, leaving only shadows burned into stone. And metal, this is the species we have discovered, Minho began, his voice carrying clearly through the hall. They call themselves humans, and they inhabit the third planet of a yellow star system, approximately 26,000 light-years from our current position. The hologram shifted to show more evidence: underground missile silos hidden in farmland, submarines prowling beneath the oceans carrying enough firepower to crack small moons, military bases scattered across every continent, where humans stored their weapons of mass destruction. Representative Dong-Sik from the Crystal Collective raised one of his forearms to speak. His people had spent centuries perfecting the art of crystal singing, and their voices could shatter mountains or heal wounds with equal skill. How many of these weapons do they possess? He asked in tones that rang like wind. Chim's Minho consulted his data tablet. Over 15,000 nuclear warheads at the peak of their arms race in the 1980s. Our analysts calculate this represents enough destructive power to eliminate all life on their planet. Approximately 50 times over. A wave of shock sounds rippled through the assembly. Gasps in languages that had no words for such destruction. Musical cries of disbelief from species that communicated through song. Even the silent telepathic races projected waves of horror that everyone could feel, but that is not the most disturbing part. Minho continued. The hologram showed human test footage: islands disappearing in blinding flashes, desert sand turned to glass by the heat, underground explosions that shook the very foundations of continents. They conducted over 2,000 test explosions on their own world, he explained, many in the atmosphere, which spread radioactive materials across their entire planet. They poisoned their own air, their own water, their own soil, just to see how big they could make the explosions. Fleet Commander Chang Wu stood up from his section near the military observers. His species, the Iron Hawks, had conquered their own violent past centuries ago, but still maintained strong defensive forces. His metallic feathers rustled with agitation as he spoke. This makes no strategic sense, he declared. If these humans wanted to test their weapons, why not do it in space or on uninhabited worlds? Why contaminate their home planet with radiation that will last for thousands of years? Dr. So-young appeared as a hologram beside Minho to help answer the questions. She had spent weeks analyzing human behavior and psychology, trying to understand how such a species could function. We believe they simply did not understand the consequences at first, she explained. When they first split the atom, they thought radiation would dissipate quickly. They learned the truth only after causing permanent damage to their environment. The assembly watched more footage of human nuclear tests, each one more powerful than the last. The humans seemed driven to build bigger and bigger bombs, as if they were competing to see who could create the most destruction. But here is what troubles us most, So-young continued. The hologram now showed modern Earth with its glowing cities and busy spaceports. Despite everything they have done to their world, despite the weapons they still possess, their civilization continues to grow. They have more people alive today than at any point in their history. Ambassador Yan Su from the Harmony Seekers floated forward. On cushions of controlled air, her people had never experienced war and struggled to understand even the concept of violence. Perhaps they are simply unaware of the danger, she suggested in her gentle singing voice. Maybe they do not understand that these weapons could destroy them. Minho shook his head sadly and activated another display. This one showed human literature, movies, and art, all dealing with nuclear war. The images were terrifying visions of devastated cities, mutated creatures, and civilizations reduced to ash. They understand perfectly, he said. They have created entire genres of entertainment based on nuclear destruction. They write books about it, make movies about it, teach their children about it in school. They know exactly what these weapons can do. The evidence continued to pile up. Human governments had built elaborate bunkers to survive nuclear war. They had created early warning systems to detect incoming missiles. They had practiced emergency drills where entire populations would hide underground. They clearly knew the danger was real, yet they keep building more weapons, said military advisor Seong Min, his voice heavy with disbelief. Our intelligence shows they continue to modernize their nuclear arsenals. Even today, they spend enormous amounts of resources maintaining weapons they claim they never want to use. Elder Bo-Ra finally spoke from her elevated position, her voice carrying the authority of centuries. Her words caused the entire assembly to fall silent as they listened. In our 1,000 years of exploring the galaxy, we have encountered many species that destroyed themselves through warfare. But those civilizations fell quickly, usually within a few generations of developing truly dangerous weapons. They lacked the wisdom to control their destructive impulses. She paused and looked around the assembly at the faces of dozens of different species, all united in their confusion about humanity. These humans have possessed world-ending weapons. For over 80 years they have used them in anger. They have tested them extensively. They have built enough to destroy their planet many times over. Yet their civilization not only survives, but thrives. How is this possible? The question hung in the air like a challenged species that had mastered interstellar travel, that had solved the problems of war and hunger, that had built peaceful societies spanning multiple star systems, found themselves baffled by a single planet of primitive beings. Dr. So Young offered her analysis. We believe the key lies in their concept of mutually assured destruction. They maintain these weapons not to use them, but to prevent others from using theirs against them. It is a balance of terror that has somehow maintained peace for decades. Coordinator Jinwoo from the Science Council stood to address this theory, but such a system requires perfect restraint from every party involved. One mistake, one moment of anger or fear, and everything ends. How can they trust each other with such power? That is exactly what frightens us, So Young replied. We have identified several incidents where their early warning systems malfunctioned, where miscommunication nearly led to nuclear war, where individual humans came within minutes of starting a global catastrophe, yet somehow they always pulled back from the brink. The assembly began to debate what should be done. Some representatives called for immediate intervention to save the humans from their own destructive nature. Others suggested quarantining the entire solar system to protect the rest of the galaxy from potential human aggression. A few voices, like Commander Chang Wu, proposed a different view. Perhaps these humans know something we have forgotten. Perhaps living with such weapons has taught them lessons about restraint and responsibility that our peaceful evolution never provided. The debate continued for hours. Representatives argued about whether humans were a threat to be contained or a mystery to be understood. Some pointed to human art and music as evidence of their peaceful nature. Others focused on their military history as proof of their dangerous tendencies. Finally, Elder Bo-Ra called for a vote on how to proceed. The options were clear: immediate contact to offer help, quarantine to contain the threat, or continued observation to learn more about this puzzling species. As the votes were counted, the hologram still showed Earth spinning peacefully in space, its blue oceans and white clouds hiding the terrible weapons that had brought the entire galactic community to this moment of decision. The humans remained unaware that their nuclear arsenals had announced their presence to the universe, and that dozens of alien civilizations now debated their fate. Their greatest shame had become their introduction to galactic society, and no one knew what would happen next. The final vote was close, but observation won by a narrow margin. The galaxy would continue watching humanity, trying to understand how a species could live with such power and somehow choose not to use it. But everyone knew this was only a temporary solution. Eventually, they would have to decide whether humans were ready to join the galactic community, or too dangerous to be allowed to spread beyond their own world. The answer to that question would determine the fate of both humanity and the galaxy itself. Lieutenant Colonel Kyung-soo sat deep underground in the North American Aerospace Defense Command bunker, staring at computer screens filled with data that made no sense. The concrete walls around him were 3 feet thick, designed to survive nuclear attack, but now they felt thin as paper against what he was seeing. For 6 months, his team had been tracking strange signals from space. They were not natural phenomena like pulsars or solar radiation. These patterns were too organized, too deliberate, too intelligent. The mathematical precision suggested technology far beyond anything humans had ever created. Dr. Yujin worked at the station next to him, her fingers flying across multiple keyboards as she tried to decode the mysterious transmissions. She had not slept properly in weeks, surviving on coffee and determination. Her usually neat laboratory coat was wrinkled and stained with equations. Written in marker, the signals came from multiple sources scattered across space, but all focused. On Earth, every transmission seemed designed to study human civilization, to learn about their technology, their culture, their military capabilities. Someone out there was watching them with the patience of a scientist studying laboratory, and Kyung-soo stood up and walked to the main display screen where colored dots showed the location of each signal source. The pattern was clear. Whoever was watching them had surrounded Earth with observation posts. They were being studied from every angle like specimens under a microscope. Commander, this is definitely artificial intelligence. Yujin called out from her workstation. I have isolated recurring mathematical sequences that appear in all transmissions. These are not random cosmic events. Someone is actively scanning our planet. The implications hit Kyung-soo like a physical blow. If aliens were watching Earth, then they had technology advanced enough for interstellar travel and communication. Humanity had barely managed to put a few people on the moon. While these beings could cross the vast emptiness between stars, he picked up the secure phone that connected directly to Washington and waited for the familiar voice of General Haewon. The general had been expecting this call ever since the first anomalous signals were detected months ago. General, we have confirmation, Kyung-soo said when the line connected. The signals are definitely artificial, and they are definitely watching us. We are not alone, and they know we exist. The emergency meeting took place 12 hours later in the Pentagon War Room. President Jae-sung sat at the head of the polished table surrounded by military advisors, intelligence officials, and the nation's top scientists. The mood in the room was tense as everyone tried to process the reality that humanity had made contact with alien intelligence. Intelligence Director Sung-ho opened his briefing folder and began presenting the evidence. We have been tracking these signals for approximately 6 months, he said. All indications suggest multiple observation platforms positioned throughout our solar system. The technology required for such operations is centuries beyond our current capabilities. The president leaned forward in his chair, his face grave with the weight of the decision before them. What do they want? He asked. Do we have any indication of their intentions? That is the question we cannot answer, sir, replied Dr. Yujin. The signals appear to be passive observation only. We have detected no weapons targeting, no aggressive positioning, no preparation for attack. They seem content to watch and learn. General Haewon spoke up from her position near the strategic displays. But we must consider the timeline, sir. Our analysis suggests these observations began shortly after the atomic bombings of Japan in 1945. The correlation is too precise to be coincidental. The room fell silent as everyone understood what this meant. Humanity's first use of nuclear weapons had somehow announced their presence to the galaxy. The very technology that had ended World War II might have painted a target on their entire planet. Secretary of Defense Minho voiced what everyone was thinking. If they have been watching us since Hiroshima, then they know about our nuclear capabilities. They know we are willing to use weapons of mass destruction. They know we have poisoned our own planet with radiation testing. Dar Yujin nodded grimly. The timing suggests that nuclear explosions create some kind of detectable signature that can be observed across interstellar distances. Our atomic age essentially sent a signal into space announcing that Earth had developed dangerous technology. President Jae-sung stood up and walked to the window. Looking out at the city beyond, the streets were filled with people going about their normal lives, completely unaware that alien observers were studying their every move. The weight of keeping this secret felt crushing. What are our options? He asked without turning around. General One consulted her tactical assessment. We could attempt to make contact ourselves, or we could continue to monitor their signals and prepare defensive measures. The problem is that any species capable of interstellar observation likely possesses military technology that could overwhelm our defenses, but they have not attacked, said Dr. Yujin. That suggests either they are peaceful or they are waiting for something. If they wanted to destroy US, they would have done it already. Their technology is clearly superior to ours. Intelligence Director Sung-ho offered another possibility. Perhaps they are afraid of us. The timing of their arrival suggests our nuclear weapons got their attention. Maybe they see us as dangerous and are trying to determine if we pose a threat to them. This idea seemed absurd at first. How could primitive humans with their crude rockets and simple computers pose any threat to beings who could travel between stars? But as the group considered it, the logic became clearer. Think about it from their perspective, said Dr. Eugene. We are a species that developed nuclear weapons and used them. We have conducted over 2,000 nuclear tests, poisoning our own environment. We maintain arsenals capable of destroying our planet multiple times over. From their point of view, we might look completely insane. The president returned to his seat and looked around the table at his advisors so they might be watching us the same way we would watch a dangerous animal at the zoo, trying to understand our behavior while keeping a safe distance. Over the following weeks, a joint task force worked around the clock to prepare for possible contact. They could not hide humanity's nuclear arsenal. Any advanced alien technology would easily detect the weapons and radiation signatures scattered across Earth. Instead, they decided to be honest about their capabilities while emphasizing humanity's desire for peace. The message they prepared was carefully crafted to show both strength and restraint. We are humanity, the message began. We have walked through the fire of our own making and emerged stronger. We possess weapons capable of great destruction, but we choose diplomacy over warfare. We have learned the true cost of violence and seek peaceful relations with all intelligent life. The transmission was broadcast on multiple frequencies toward the suspected alien observation points. It carried mathematical proofs to demonstrate human intelligence, musical compositions to show their culture, and detailed information about their efforts to reduce nuclear weapons and protect their environment. Now came the hardest part, waiting for a response. The entire human race depended on how these unknown observers would interpret their message. Would they see humans as potential allies or dangerous enemies? Would they offer friendship or demand submission? In bunkers and command centers around the world, military leaders prepared for every possibility while hoping for the best. Scientists worked to decode any reply, while politicians planned how to break the news to the public without causing worldwide panic. Dr. Eugene continued monitoring the alien signals, looking for any change in pattern or intensity that might indicate a response. The mathematical sequences remained constant, but she thought she detected something new, a subtle shift that might mean the observers were discussing what they had received. Ed King Su stood watch in his underground command center, knowing that the next few days or weeks would determine humanity's future. The same nuclear weapons that had once threatened to destroy civilization might now be their only bargaining chip in negotiations with advanced alien powers. The irony was not lost on him. Humanity's greatest shame might become their salvation if it earned them respect rather than conquest in the eyes of species that had never known such destructive power. All they could do now was wait and hope that whoever was watching them would choose to talk rather than act, and that humanity's message of controlled strength would be enough to secure their survival in a universe that was far less empty than they had ever imagined. The meeting station floated in empty space halfway between Earth and the nearest alien observation post, built in just 3 months. Using both human engineering and alien-provided blueprints, it represented the first cooperative effort between the two species. The structure looked like a crystal flower with transparent walls and chambers, designed to accommodate both human and alien physiologies. Admiral Inho adjusted his dress uniform one final time as his shuttle approached the docking bay. He had been chosen to represent humanity, not because of his military rank, but because of his experience in nuclear negotiations. He understood better than most how to discuss terrible weapons while maintaining hope for peace. Behind him sat the rest of the human delegation: Dr. Sun Wu, their top nuclear physicist, Dr. Eugene, who had first decoded the alien signals, and diplomat Colonel Mi Young, who had spent decades working on arms control treaties. Each carried the weight of speaking for their entire species. On the other side of the station, Captain Wu Jin made his own final preparations. His skin had shifted to a calm blue color that his people used to signal peaceful intentions, but underneath he felt nervous energy that threatened to change his appearance. His own team included Dr. So Young, Elder Bilra, participating by hologram, and several other representatives from the Galactic Council. The docking procedures went smoothly thanks to computer systems that had learned to translate Between human and alien technologies, within minutes both delegations were floating in the main meeting chamber surrounded by walls that offered a spectacular view of the stars. The first shock came when the two groups actually saw each other in person. Despite their reputation for violence, the humans looked remarkably ordinary. They had 2 arms, 2 legs, and forward-facing eyes, just like many peaceful species. Admiral In-ho was tall and dignified with gray hair and steady hands that suggested control rather than aggression. Captain Wu-jin appeared equally unthreatening, his blue skin and large eyes, giving him an almost gentle appearance that made it hard to believe his species had mastered interstellar travel. The aliens moved with fluid grace as if they were swimming through the air rather than walking. Dr. So-young activated the translation system that would convert speech between their languages in real time. The delay was barely noticeable, but both sides spoke carefully to avoid misunderstandings that could have terrible consequences. We must ask. Captain Wu-jin began, his voice carrying musical tones that the translator rendered into calm human speech. Why did your species choose to create such terrible weapons? We have studied your history, and we cannot understand how intelligent beings would build devices designed only for destruction. Admiral In-ho had prepared for this question during the long journey to the station. He understood that humanity's nuclear arsenal was the reason for this meeting, and that his answer would determine whether humans were seen as potential allies or permanent threats. We were afraid, he said simply. Fear drives many of our choices, both wise and foolish. We feared each other, so we built weapons. Then we feared the weapons, so we learned to control them. Fear taught us restraint when wisdom alone was not enough. The alien delegation exchanged glances, their skin colors shifting slightly as they communicated through visual signals as well as words. Dr. So-young leaned forward, her large eyes focused intently on the human physicist. But the radiation, the contamination, she said. You poisoned your own world. How could you accept such damage to your home planet? Dr. Sun-woo answered with the weight of decades studying nuclear science. We did not accept it, he said. We made a terrible mistake and spent decades learning from it. Every nuclear test taught us more about the true cost. That is why we stopped testing in the atmosphere, why we built safer reactors, why we worked to reduce our weapons. The translator had difficulty with some human concepts, like learning from mistakes and accepting responsibility for past errors. These ideas seemed foreign to species that had developed slowly and peacefully without making catastrophic errors. Elder Biora appeared as a shimmering hologram, her ancient voice carrying across the chamber. Your species lives with a sword hanging over its head, she observed. How do you function, knowing you could destroy everything at any moment? Colonel Mi-young smiled grimly as she responded. The same way you function, knowing that any star could explode. Any asteroid could strike your worlds. We accept the risk and work to minimize it. The difference is we created our own risk, so we take responsibility for managing it. This concept of self-created danger followed by self-imposed control fascinated the aliens. Their civilizations had developed defensive technologies to protect against natural disasters, but had never faced threats of their own making. Captain Wu-jin asked the question that had puzzled the Galactic Council for months. Your weapons serve no military purpose. A bomb that destroys entire cities cannot capture territory or defeat armies. It exists only to terrorize enemies through the threat of total annihilation. Why would you build such things? Admiral In-ho took a deep breath before answering. Because conventional warfare was becoming too costly, he explained. During World War II, millions died in battles that lasted years. Nuclear weapons ended that war in days. Yes, the immediate destruction was terrible, but it prevented invasions that would have killed many more people. The aliens struggled to understand this logic. Their mathematics showed that nuclear war could kill more people in hours than conventional war could kill in decades. But Admiral In-ho continued his explanation. The key is that we only use them twice, he said. Since then they have prevented wars rather than causing them. The fear of nuclear destruction has made our leaders more careful, more willing to negotiate, more reluctant to fight. Every crisis that might have led to major war has been resolved through diplomacy instead. Dr. So-young consulted her data displays. But you continued building more weapons even after the war ended. Your arsenals grew to include thousands of nuclear devices. Dr. Sun-woo nodded sadly. That was our greatest mistake, he admitted. We thought that more weapons would make us safer, but instead they made everyone more afraid. It took decades to realize that a few hundred nuclear weapons were just as effective as several thousand for preventing war. The conversation continued for hours as both sides tried to understand each other. The aliens learned that human aggression was balanced by human cooperation, that the same species that created nuclear weapons also created international laws to control them. Humans learned that the galaxy was filled with peaceful civilizations that had never experienced major wars. These species had developed slowly over millions of years, gradually learning cooperation and harmony as they spread among the stars. The most difficult moment came when Captain Wu Jin asked directly, "Are your weapons a threat to other species? If humans gained interstellar travel, would you use nuclear devices against alien worlds?" The question hung in the air like a physical presence. Both delegations understood that this was the real issue that would determine humanity's future in the galaxy. Admiral Inho answered with complete honesty. "Our weapons exist to protect our world and our people. We have no desire to threaten others, but we will defend ourselves if attacked. We hope that other species will respect this position and work with us peacefully." Colonel Mi-young added, "We have spent 70 years learning to control our destructive impulses. Perhaps it is time to use that knowledge to help others. We could share what we have learned about living with dangerous technology." The meeting lasted 3 days with breaks for both sides to consult with their home governments. Gradually, trust began to develop as each group realized the other was genuinely seeking peaceful solutions. On the final day, Elder Bo-ra made a surprising offer. "Perhaps your species could serve as guardians," she suggested. "You understand destruction better than any peaceful civilization. When natural disasters or hostile forces threaten our worlds, you might be uniquely qualified to help us defend what we have built." Admiral Inho was quiet for a long moment before responding. "We would be honored to help protect peaceful civilizations," he said finally, "but we would need assurance that we would be trusted partners, not just hired soldiers." The negotiations ended with a preliminary agreement. Humanity would be allowed to develop space travel and establish colonies, but they would also serve as the galaxy's defense force. When needed, their nuclear weapons would be adapted for space combat against threats that peaceful species could not handle. Dr. Yujin made the final observation that summed up the entire meeting. "Perhaps," she said, "the galaxy needed a species that understood darkness in order to truly appreciate the light." As the delegations prepared to return to their respective worlds, both sides felt cautiously optimistic. Humanity had found its place among the stars, not as conquerors but as protectors. The same weapons that had once threatened to destroy Earth might now serve to defend all civilization. The nuclear fire that had announced humanity's presence to the galaxy would become a beacon of protection, ensuring that the peace others had built would never be broken by forces too terrible for gentle species to comprehend. The emergency alert reached every inhabited world in the galaxy. Within hours, Captain Wujin stood in the command center of the Galactic Defense Station, watching as red warning symbols appeared across the three-dimensional star map one by one. Peaceful civilizations reported the same terrifying message. Unknown vessels approaching from outside the galaxy. 12 star systems had already gone dark, their radio signals stopping abruptly as if entire civilizations had simply vanished. The attacking fleet was massive, composed of mechanical ships that showed no interest in communication or negotiation. Admiral Inho received the alert while inspecting the new joint human-alien research facility on Mars. The message was brief but clear. "Harvester fleet detected. All peaceful species request immediate assistance. Estimated arrival at core worlds in 6 months." The name Harvester fleet had been chosen by the first alien scouts who survived an encounter with the invaders. The mechanical ships seemed designed for one purpose, only consuming entire planets for raw materials. They strip-mined worlds down to the core, leaving nothing but empty space where vibrant civilizations had once flourished. Within days, representatives from across the galaxy gathered at the emergency council session. Elder Bo-ra looked older than her 1,000 years as she addressed the assembly. Her purple skin had faded to almost white with stress and fear. "We have never faced anything like this," she announced. To the crowd of worried aliens, the Harvester fleet consists of approximately 50,000 ships, each one larger than our biggest space stations. They have consumed the singing crystals of Vega, the tree cities of Altair, and the floating gardens of Procyon. The holographic displays showed the path of destruction across the outer rim of the galaxy. Entire solar systems had been reduced to debris fields in a matter of days. The mechanical ships worked with terrifying efficiency, turning planets into raw materials and using those materials to build more ships. Captain Wu Jin stood to address the council. We have analyzed the attack patterns, he said. The Harvesters show no interest in preserving life or negotiating surrender. They simply consume everything in their path and move on to the next target. Our defensive technologies are not designed for this type of warfare. The assembled representatives began to panic. Species that had lived in peace for millions of years suddenly faced the prospect of total annihilation. Their energy weapons were designed to disable ships, not destroy them. Their defensive shields could slow attackers but not stop a fleet of this size. Coordinator Jin Wu from the Science Council voiced what everyone was thinking. Our entire civilization is built on the principle of preserving life. We have no experience with total warfare. We do not know how to fight enemies that cannot be reasoned with. The debate that followed revealed the terrible truth. The peaceful species of the galaxy had forgotten how to wage war. Their technology was advanced but not weaponized. Their ships were fast and efficient but not armored for battle. Their entire philosophy was based on cooperation and understanding. But there was one species that remembered how to fight. Admiral Inho had been quietly listening to the desperate discussions when he finally stood up. The chamber fell silent as all eyes turned to the human representative. His calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the panic around him. We do, he said simply. The two words seemed to echo in the vast chamber. Elder Biora looked down at him from her elevated position, her ancient eyes reflecting both hope and fear. You have experience with this type of warfare, she asked, though she already knew the answer. Admiral Inho nodded grimly. We have spent centuries learning to fight wars of total destruction. Our nuclear weapons, our military strategies, our entire defense philosophy is based on facing enemies who want to eliminate us completely. We know how to fight when survival is the only option. They are so young. Activated her translation systems to address the human delegation. We have spent decades fearing what you might do with those weapons, she said. Now we must ask, will you help us? The human team exchanged glances. They had come to this meeting as junior partners in a galactic community that barely trusted them. Now they were being asked to lead the defense of civilization itself. General Haywan, who had arrived with the latest intelligence reports, stood beside Admiral Inho. Our preliminary analysis suggests that human military doctrine could be adapted for this situation, she said. The key is not just the power to destroy, but the knowledge of when and how to use it. The aliens listened with growing amazement as the humans outlined their strategic capabilities. Humanity had developed command structures that could coordinate millions of soldiers across multiple battlefields. They had created weapons designed specifically to destroy rather than disable. They had battle-tested technologies that could operate in the chaos of total war, but most importantly, humans understood the psychology of facing extinction. They knew how to function when death was certain, how to keep fighting when hope seemed lost, how to make the terrible choices necessary for survival. Dr. Jin presented the technical analysis. We have been studying your peaceful technologies, she explained, your energy systems, your propulsion methods, your materials science. All of it is centuries ahead of ours, but you have never weaponized these advances. The solution became clear. Human military knowledge combined with alien technology could create defense systems that neither species could develop alone. The peaceful aliens had the tools, but humans had the will to use them for war. Over the following weeks, the greatest cooperation in galactic history began. Alien scientists worked alongside human engineers to convert peaceful technology into weapons of war. Energy systems designed to power cities were modified to destroy ships. Propulsion systems built for exploration were adapted for military strikes. Commander Chang Min took charge of the tactical planning, working with alien fleet commanders who had never seen battle. His experience in nuclear strategy proved invaluable when dealing with an enemy that sought total annihilation. The most difficult part was convincing peaceful species to embrace the Mentality of war. Many alien representatives struggled with the concept of destroying enemy ships rather than disabling them. The idea of killing thinking beings, even mechanical ones, went against millions of years of evolutionary development. Admiral Inho addressed these concerns in a broadcast to the entire galaxy. "I understand your reluctance to embrace violence," he said. "We humans struggled with the same feelings when we first developed weapons of mass destruction, but sometimes the choice is not between violence and peace, but between resistance and extinction." The joint fleet that assembled to face the Harvesters was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human tactical officers commanded alien crews using weapons that combined the best of both civilizations. Nuclear warheads redesigned for space combat provided the destructive power, while alien energy shields and faster-than-light drives provided the mobility. Dr. Sunwoo worked with alien physicists to create new weapon systems based on human nuclear technology. The same principles that had once threatened to destroy Earth were now adapted to protect the entire galaxy. As the Harvester fleet approached the core worlds, every species in the galaxy watched and waited. The peaceful civilizations that had built a society based on harmony now depended on the one species they had feared most. Irony was not lost on anyone. Humanity's nuclear weapons, which had been seen as evidence of their dangerous nature, were now the galaxy's best hope for survival. The same destructive power that had horrified peaceful aliens might be the only thing capable of stopping the mechanical invaders. Captain Woojin stood on the bridge of the Joint Command ship, watching as human and alien crews worked together, preparing for the battle that would determine the fate of all civilized life. His skin had turned a deep blue color that his people used to signal determination in the face of danger. Beside him, Admiral Inho studied the tactical displays showing the approaching enemy fleet. "We spent decades learning to control our weapons," he said quietly. "Now we finally get to use them for what they were meant to do: protect innocent life." The Harvester fleet would arrive in 72 hours, and the galaxy would learn whether the combination of human experience and alien technology would be enough to stop an enemy that had already consumed a dozen civilizations. Everything depended on whether the species that had nearly destroyed itself with nuclear fire could now use that same power to save everyone else. The Battle of the Three Suns began at 0400 Galactic Standard Time, when the first wave of Harvester ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Commander Chang Min watched from the bridge of the flagship Soul's Pride as 50,000 mechanical vessels spread across space like a deadly storm cloud. Each Harvester ship was a masterpiece of destructive engineering built from the remains of consumed planets. They bristled with mining equipment that had been converted into weapons. Their hulls showed the scars of countless battles, and the metal was stained with the dust of dead worlds. The combined galactic fleet moved to intercept them. Human tactics merged with alien technology, creating a fighting force unlike anything the universe had ever seen. Fast alien scout ships darted between the enemy formations, gathering intelligence, while heavy human battle cruisers took position for the main assault. Admiral Inho coordinated the overall strategy from the command center. Deep inside the flagship, his decades of experience with nuclear warfare had prepared him for this moment when civilization itself hung in the balance. Beside him, Captain Wu Jin translated orders between human commanders and alien crew members. The first exchange of fire lit up space with energy beams and nuclear explosions. The Harvester weapons were designed to crack planets open, so they tore through normal shields like paper, but the human nuclear warheads hit with a different kind of power entirely. Dr. Sunwoo watched from the weapon control center as his modified nuclear missiles struck the enemy ships. The same fusion reactions that had once threatened to destroy Earth now served to protect all life in the galaxy. Each warhead carried the destructive force of a small star concentrated into a weapon small enough to be fired from a ship. The mechanical enemies had no defense against such weapons. Their shields were designed to absorb energy beams and deflect physical projectiles, but nuclear explosions released both simultaneously in quantities that overwhelmed their systems. The first Harvester ship to take a direct hit simply vanished in a ball of superheated plasma, but the enemy fleet was vast, and for every ship destroyed, two more took its place. The battle spread across multiple star systems as both sides maneuvered for advantage. Human carriers launched waves of nuclear-armed fighters while alien cruisers provided covering fire with their energy weapons commander. Chang Min found himself commanding forces he had never imagined. Alien pilots flew ships armed with human nuclear torpedoes while human gunners operated alien energy cannons. The cooperation born from desperation created combinations that neither species could have achieved alone. The turning point came when Dr. Yujin made a crucial discovery about the Harvester fleet structure. The mechanical ships were not independent vessels, but components of a larger network. Each ship was controlled by central processing units that coordinated the entire fleet. If we can destroy their command ships, she broadcast to the fleet, the rest might lose coordination. They are not individual fighters, but parts of a single organism. Admiral immediately ordered a change in tactics. Instead of fighting the entire fleet, the combined forces would focus on the largest harvester vessels that seemed to be directing the others. It was a gamble, but it was based on human experience with command structures and hierarchical control. The assault on the command ships required every weapon in the arsenal. Alien energy beams carved through the enemy shields while human nuclear warheads finished the job. The explosions were visible from neighboring star systems as each command vessel died in a burst of fusion fire. As the third command ship exploded, something remarkable happened. The remaining harvester ships began to drift aimlessly. Their coordinated attack patterns broke down into random movements. As individual vessels,